All right. Well, what can you tell us about what happened at this briefing today? What was said?
Well, I think the administration was laying the case out for taking action. A lot of it, is in their case, I think publicly and privately, is geared around the fact that they broke international law, that this was a sarin gas that was used, a chemical weapon, in blatant violation of international law. And really their concern is it should be for all of us, that North Korea and other countries have chemical weapons. And so if no action is taken here, it's basically saying that anybody who has chemical weapons can go ahead and use it, and no one in the international community is going to do something. And that's really the risk here of not doing anything. So, there's a lot to be looked at, I think, over the course of the next week or two.
Tell us about going down there and how all this came together, even today.
Well, I think the administration was planning on moving a lot quicker than they anticipated, and so this was the first briefing of what will be many in the next, I think, week or two. There'll be hearings both in the Senate and in the House, and so they're just, I think, going to continue to lay out the case. But I do think it does. My question really early on when I first went down was, can we make the situation better? And I'm not sure we can make the situation better. If Assad falls, who's going to take their place? A lot of people are saying the Al-Qaeda rebel group is more prepared to take over if the regime would fall. So now you've got Al-Qaeda. That doesn't seem to make it better. But the issue of having a law where, an international law, that you cannot use chemical weapons and just allow dictators to get away with using them will allow Assad maybe to use them again immediately. So then how do we feel after that if another 1,000 people are dead, another 500 kids are dead because of chemical weapons? How do you feel about that? So either way, it's going to be a very difficult situation, because either way, people are going to get killed. I mean, and that's just what makes these decisions so very difficult. Either there's going to be innocent Syrians who are going to get killed as collateral damage from a potential attack, or if we do nothing, Assad continues to use chemical weapons and kills innocent Syrians with chemical weapons. What reduces the chances of innocent people getting killed? That's what I really want to evaluate over the next week, because quite frankly, at this point, I don't think we can make the situation any better. We're not going to bring democracy to Syria. There's not a grand plan here. It's, can you limit the amount of innocent lives that will be killed over the long term, not just in Syria, but in other places where dictators would maybe use chemical weapons if they see that the United States or Russia or China or any other country is not going to take action against them. So that's how the next week or so is going to play out as far as my decision-making process.
How difficult also is it knowing that this is a nation that has, our nation is, spent financially and emotionally over a war now, and to have to face this?
Yeah, no, I mean, that's what really makes it hard. I think that's why a lot of people, both in the polls and in Congress, are saying, no way, there's no way I want to okay us going there. But, at the same time, we have a very unique responsibility as a country to enforce international law. Russia's playing games right now because they've got relationships with Syria, energy relationships and others, and so they're not being reasonable. They're being very interested in their own economic interests for their country and not looking at the bigger picture here. And so it's leaving France and America. It sounds like the coalition is starting to build, and it'll build over the next week or two. So I'm war weary. I mean, I go to veterans hospitals. I look at what the last 10 years or so have done to our country and to the people of our country and the budget in our country. Both of the wars were on a credit card. We're still paying the bills for those wars. So, but the world doesn't stop moving, and it's why it's a very, very, when you get into the foreign policy realm, these issues get very, very difficult.
Do you feel as though the president has weakened executive authority by going to Congress?
I hope so. I hope he has. I really think this is a really noble and correct constitutional move, that we should not be getting involved in these things without the consent of the American people. And he has, and I appreciate that. There may be unique situations where our national interests are at stake, which I don't think they are here. And so I'm proud that the president has said and taken the step of maybe not getting the result he wanted by coming to Congress. And I think that's okay. The executive has absorbed a lot of power over the last few decades, going back into the early 70s, late 60s. So I'm glad he's doing it.
Is it also a shrewd political move in the sense that it probably will divide the Republicans?
Yeah, it may divide the Republicans, but if the Republicans are divided, he may not get the resolution that he wants, because I don't know if he'll have enough Democrats to support him in the House of Representatives. He may have it in the Senate. But I hope that we can set a lot of the politics aside for this. This is really about international law. It is about some big picture issues that you can come down on either way, but like I said, you can argue either side in many ways. But it may divide the Republicans. Okay, we'll find out.
Nancy Pelosi has already said she will urge her caucus to vote in favor of it. Does that mean you?
No, I'm gonna wait. I'm gonna wait and see. I got a lot. I'm just, as I said, my issue is, can we make it better? And if we can't make it better, what will reduce the amount of civilian casualties in Syria? To me, that's the proper moral position, and it's the proper political position. And if an aggressive action will save lives in the long run, then I would be inclined to support it. If it doesn't, and it's not going to change the situation, and innocent people will get killed because of our involvement more than I think otherwise, then I'll be against it. Really, that's kind of my barometer at this point.
What was the feeling coming out of the briefing? What did your colleagues, what was the feeling you got?
I think most people felt that this is a very complicated situation. There are so many different factions within Syria. Their allies are all over the country, all over the globe, supporting them and supporting different rebel groups. So it's very, very complicated. That's why I said the issue really isn't, can we make the situation better? Because I really don't think we can. The question is, do you allow someone to blatantly violate international law? We have laws in America. You just aren't allowed to murder somebody. You're just not allowed to not pay taxes. I mean, there are laws that we have that to be enforced, and if they're not, other people will do it. And we're afraid, one of the concerns that I'm going to weigh is how many people will go out and start using chemical weapons.
But if Congress doesn't give the president the authority, isn't Congress weakening the executive?
Well, yeah, I think so. I think Congress will be weakening the executive. In what area? I mean, we're really talking about, we're not talking about national interest here, I don't think. I don't think there's a direct national interest. This is not Pearl Harbor. This is not 9/11. This is not where we've been attacked directly. This is our responsibility as a global power enforcing international law to try to prevent innocent people from getting killed from chemical weapons. That ultimately is the question here. And so I think the president moving in that area should have the consent of Congress. And I think as a former constitutional law professor, he recognized that, and that's why he's going to Congress.
Is there confirmation from the inspectors that this was the work of Assad or one of the rebel groups that launched this weapon?
Well, without getting into all the details, I think the administration today and the president has said he's convinced that it was Assad. The UN will have an analysis in the next week or two, but the president, the administration is saying this was Assad. We don't think any of the rebel groups had the capacity to do this launch, and our intelligence is saying that it is Assad. Others, like Putin, are saying maybe it's not, and I think that's more of a political distraction. But it seems like they've had the ability to do this for a while, and they've done it.
John Kerry saying it's sarin gas this morning?
Yeah.
And
they told us not to say it. I was like, he's on TV saying it. What do you mean?
And Congress comes back into session on the 9th.
Right.
So things will be moving.
Yeah, I think rather quickly. I'm not sure if the Senate's in this week or not, but there will be hearings and there'll be more briefings, more classified briefings. And there's a lot more questions. This was just a few hours today, but I think there's a lot more questions that need to be answered. And again, I mean, it's tough sitting in Youngstown, Ohio, to somehow think, why would we get involved in something in Syria? But when you think about just blatant violation of the world saying no chemical weapons because of the impact that they have, and him just blatantly violating that. Now, as a global leader, the president feels we need to take action and enforce global laws, because others will then violate the law as well all over the world, and then we don't want to be sitting on the sidelines looking like we could have taken action and maybe deterred a lot of these uses of chemical weapons, but we didn't act, and now, you know, we're going to feel pretty guilty about that. So that's why it gets complicated.
Were you disappointed the president or the vice president or secretary of state weren't there today?
No, I mean, something tells me there may be a direct pitch from either Vice President Biden or the president, especially as the vote gets closer, and that's traditionally how it's worked. They use undersecretaries and other deputy administrators to come in, begin to lay the groundwork, and as the vote gets closer and closer, then they engage for the final push for the vote.
Anything that we're not mentioning?
I think we covered it all. All right. Enjoy your glass of wine.